to a desire, right? To a desire that you have so that you can get motivated and you can push through those ups and downs.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today on the Gentle Art of Crushing It show, where we focus on learning and sharing with our listeners all there is to know about how to create success in our lives. This show stands on the shoulders of giants. Our mission is to empower and inspire our listeners to create the life of their dreams whilst having a blast in the process. Let's celebrate life together. Welcome to the show.
Well, hello and welcome to another episode of the Gentle Art of Crushing It. My name is Derek Felch. I am one of 7 hosts bringing you 3 episodes every week. And today I am joined by 3 other of our hosts in kind of a group chat episode. And today I have David Lyons, Nathan Murith, and Marta. I do not want to embarrass myself and mispronounce your last name. So welcome, guys. Glad to see you all in person. And today I thought...
hey, folks. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I have to learn how to share the microphone with all you guys now. So, but I appreciate you guys joining us. Anybody have anything exciting and new to share? Anything happening in your lives that you want to brag about? There's a...
Ooh. Let's see. Finalizing 2023 goals and should have them kind of refined by the end of this month. So that's exciting stuff that's happening on my end.
That's awesome.
What do those goals look like? Anything you can share?
So there's going to be something around either a business acquisition or a business plan being generated and then having to execute upon it. So very exciting. Trying to get that done by the end of 2023.
That's
Exciting.
very cool. Well, I thought today, guys, we could talk about, and Marta gave us a good lead in, the subject of why. And this is, honest, in full disclosure, not something that I have really been a good master of. I hear a lot of people talking about defining your why and having clarity around your why. And so I thought I would ask you guys, why is having a why important to you, in your opinion?
I can take a stab at that one there, Derek. That's a mighty question, but I'll do my best to answer it. So when I think about having a why, I kind of equate that with having a purpose. And I think that's powerful for a couple of reasons. One is you need a purpose greater than just, paying the bills or, putting food on the table to drive you and to give you motivation when times are tough, when things aren't going your way. That greater purpose and that greater why is what I rely on to push me through the tough times. And then the other benefit that I see of having a why and a strong purpose is it kind of works like a vision to pull other people in. So if you have a strong purpose that other people can relate to, it makes it easier to pull them into your business, whether that be customers, business partners, and employees even. People at the end of the day are also looking for more than just, a paycheck or a product. They want to relate to what purpose are you serving? What's your why as a company? What's your why as an employer? And that gives them meaning as well, I think. So those are the couple things that I've seen, and I'm continuously experimenting with, how do I articulate that and how do I move forward and implement that into my business?
That's really good, David. Nathan, Marta, what about you guys? Just putting you on the spot.
It's a great question.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Marta, please.
No, I think what David had said is spot on. It's like if you're pursuing something that has, ups and downs to it, right? You have to have this connection to a desire, right? To a desire that you have so that you can get motivated and you can push through those ups and downs. I think that's the biggest reason in my mind. And I forget the book that talks a lot about this. I think the author is Napoleon Hill, but I forget the title of the book, but it, talks a lot about that desire. And I don't think I understood that book fully when I read it until I started thinking about like my impossible goal and what I want to pursue in life. And that's when things started really connecting for me as like, okay, if I'm going to take this beast of a project on, right? Or if I'm going to change paths in my life, like professionally, let's say, I need to, number one, have that desire to like help me get through the knowns and the unknowns, right? Because a lot of the things you're going to be taking on, you're not going to have any clue about, and you're going to have to figure out how to get through those in order to get to your end point. So that's kind of my two
That's
cents
good.
on that.
Nathan, what were you going to share?
First, Marta, is the book Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill? Is that the one you're thinking of?
I believe that's the one, yeah. Yep.
Awesome. That way we have the name of the author to put in the show notes. I think David and Marta pretty much covered it, but I think for me, why having a why is just, I don't know. I guess I believe we were put on this earth for a reason, not just, randomly. And life's short, I guess, maybe even very short. So I struggle with, or I personally, I guess I should say, struggle with letting my days go by without feeling like I've achieved something. And it doesn't mean, I have to have, won a gold medal at X, Y, or Z, or, like these, insurmountable, crazy, achievements that need to happen in a day. But it's more about, I don't want to feel like I'm just, mindlessly wandering through my days and life without providing, some good somewhere, some meaning, right? And I think, because of that, I try to set a why, or I try to think about what is this why, right? Why am I here? Why am I doing this? What am I doing today? Why is it important, and all of that? And that helps me personally with, fighting that potential like coasting, I'm doing air quotes here, lifestyle of just like letting life happen, right? And I guess I don't want to be a passenger. I want to be a driver, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. Very meta. I'm not sure that was very clearly
That's
explained.
good.
But
That's good. So do you feel like, we all are probably in different, we run in different circles of investors and people who want to get into real estate or other businesses. Do you think that a lot of people's why is just, I want to make more money? Or do you...
I actually think a lot of people don't have a why. Sorry, so let me rephrase that. I think maybe in general in life, I want to say maybe most people that I encounter, I would put in the bucket of, I don't know that they have a why, or that they know what it is, or why it's important. I think maybe if we think more specifically about these, these networks of and circles of people that are into, real estate investing, or, overachieving and, progressing in life and whatnot, I think in that context, in that circle, more often than not, people will have a why. I think that's a fair statement, Derek. And whether or not it's money, I don't know. I think often it's not actually about the money.
Yeah. So what? Go ahead, Mark.
I was going to say, like, I actually got into real estate because I had a why. So I had a why, and I had this problem around the why. And then I said, okay, how am I going to solve this problem to get at my purpose, right? And that turned me to real estate. So it's a little bit of a, like, almost like a flip of what Nathan was saying, but yeah, that's sort of my experience with it.
So do you think a person's why changes? Like, does it change over time? Is it a constant why? What's your thoughts on that?
I think it should be reevaluated. I mean, I don't think it has to change. But I think it's okay to change it and to reevaluate it, especially like something annually. for me personally, I know my why has changed a lot. My why kind of starting out in real estate was more so running away from like the corporate job. And I guess in the positive sense, you could phrase it as freedom, wanting freedom of time. But it was really like, I need to get free from this corporate job that I don't love and that restricts me. Now I'm kind of delving into maybe a higher purpose, which is more like personal transformation and being an example for others. So for me, my why's changed. I think it's okay to change your why, but happy to hear what other perspectives there are.
Yeah,
Marta,
and I
you were
think
going to jump in?
sure. Yeah, I think you can have multiple whys, right? Kind of like what David you described. One why leads to another, which I think is maybe what happened with me. So yeah, I think it varies from person to person too.
But yeah, just I wanted to touch on what you said, Marta. I think similar to what you said, maybe it's a mix of what David and you're saying, Marta. I think you can have several whys, and for me, there's like this bigger why that never changes, and then like smaller whys that feed into that bigger why that will change depending on the context, the environment, the year, or the whatever. And for me, the bigger why is pretty simple. It's just I want to create a better future for my family and my kids. This generation and further generations, and that one never changes. And it's kind of everything else that I do feeds into that. And the smaller whys, they'll change. I have whys around kind of the stuff that I want to do in my W-2, which I'm one of the fortunate ones that I still absolutely love what I do, and I can do that, and on the side work on these other things, like this podcast or real estate or things like that, and I have whys for those. So in that sense, I have several, and I guess they kind of change over time. To answer your question, Derek.
So, just to help people that might get overwhelmed by that thought, because I'm like still trying to figure out my big why, and now you're how would you recommend how would you recommend people determine what their why is, or how to find a why without falling in the trap of overthinking?
That's a great question.
That's what I was really trying to get. I just wanted one great question. That's what I wanted. Thank you. I can call it.
Well, I think we're going to have to end it here anyway.
We'll just stop
I don't know
there.
how to answer that one.
That's right. Yeah.
Good question. We'll talk to you on the next episode. Thanks, Derek. I think it starts with, a person's values and beliefs, right, in life in general, right? Just maybe that's another way to say, what's important to them at their core, right? Because, my wanting to leave a better future for my family, maybe somebody else that couldn't care less about that, right? Maybe they're, it's not something that's important to them or whatever. So I think, understanding what one's core values are is, I guess, a starting point. And then maybe your follow-up question there, Derek, is like, well, how do I know what those core values are? I don't know, right? But the point being is, I think at some point, answering a question like this or figuring out, what your why might be, it takes time to introspect, right? And it takes time for one to actually think about this, right? It's like, I feel like today, microwave society and whatever, we are never allowed or given, or whatever the right term is, time to think. So you have to do stuff, do this, deliver this, go on to the next meeting or next call or whatever. And it's like, well, what about the space and time to think so that I can form an opinion about this or form an idea about this or whatever? Yeah. And I think for that question, it's the same, right? It's like, if you don't ever think about what's your why, I don't know that you're ever going to find an answer. I don't know.
Yeah. If I can just piggyback off of that for a second, I love that. number one, going back to your values, and number two, like giving yourself the space and time to think about what those are. And I'll give you an example of like my experience is I developed my why and realized what my why was when I was on maternity leave during a pandemic. Like, it shouldn't take literally being out of work for maternity leave and a pandemic to like allow me time to have creative thinking time and focus time. Like, that should not be the case. And I think you're right. We just don't give ourselves that time and space to be able to do that, right? And that's really what it takes to be able to get down to that, like, because I think you have to peel away layers, right? Like, yes, I want freedom of time, but why do I want freedom of time? Oh, okay, I want to spend more time with my kids, or I want to travel with my kids more. Okay, why? And, you know, I want to teach them things, right? That the school system maybe doesn't teach them, right? Like, so it's like you kind of have to go through that process on your own based on what's important to you.
That's really good. That's really good. Do you think it's, and this may sound judgmental, but those who know me know that I may have said that to me once or twice. Is it as beneficial to have a why that comes from a negative or a reaction? Like, I don't know if that question makes sense. Does it, like if you're just saying, I want to leave my job, or I feel like a lot of people move from a negative, which I don't know if that really will be sustainable. I don't know. Was there a question there? We're going to delete that.
I think there was an implied question.
It was not a great question. It was
I don't know.
Question.
Another great question.
More
this
implied
is
than
two
great.
for two.
It was
there.
implied
Good
that it
job
was
today.
great. It was really what I heard, but yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I don't know. I think it might be personal, right? I think generally, you know, for me, I tend to be a glass half full type person, very positive person. So I try to find the positive spin on whatever the situation and use that as my, you know, North Star, and not the opposite. This is maybe a personal thing, but I'm just generally speaking tired of being surrounded by negativity. You know, be it the news, be it social media, be it, you know, these anonymous, you know, forums and stuff like that. Just, I don't want that in my life. So I try to cut that out and find the positive spin on whatever it is, and use that as the lever, right, or the force. But that might be personal.
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. No, that's good. I think if I've observed anything lately, as I've listened to more people talk about the need for a why, it's kind of what we said earlier, that people don't take the time. We don't give ourselves the time to just think and decide what our why is. And I know, I mean, I'm guilty. I like to do a lot of stuff. I'm an achiever, like Nathan said, but sometimes I feel guilty if I'm just going to take an hour to think or to plan that kind of stuff. So, David, any thoughts about any of this? Why?
Yeah, sure. I think I have a similar perspective to Nathan in that I like to be more positive and be attracted to something as opposed to being running away from something. And I do think that is a more powerful way. I think if somebody's getting started and maybe doesn't know where to start, if they need to use that kind of negative leverage to get started, to take action, I think that is positive in that they're getting started and they're building momentum. But I think ultimately being attracted to a future that you kind of dream of and that's empowered by positive emotions and that you feel grateful for is going to be more powerful, more sustainable, and it's also going to draw more people into it. Because if I'm angry and I want to leave my job and I carry that energy with me, I think other people aren't attracted to that as much as, hey, I'm creating something great that's going to change lives. That's exciting. That's going to pull people in. And so that for that reason, I think it's more powerful and more sustainable. So I'm definitely a fan of being attracted to something positive as opposed to avoiding the negative, but they both can work.
So do you all feel like you have a defined why, a clear why, that you may not have a T-shirt printed up, but like you feel like you're all running with defined whys as successful people? Putting you all on the spot here.
Yes. For me, yes.
Yeah, some days. Some days. Yeah, I don't know. I think honestly, for me, it changes. Some days I'm highly confident that it's, nailed down to a T and it's perfect and exactly the why that I'm looking for. And some days I doubt that as well as a lot of other things. I don't know.
That's good.
Again, I think that my big why I mentioned earlier, that will not change. But it's like the other, puzzle pieces that will build up to that do sometimes. And I, like everyone else, I go through moments of doubt and wondering, and maybe I made a mistake. Maybe I'm not looking at this the right way, and maybe I just can't do this, and whatever it may be. So yeah, honestly, some days.
Okay, that's good.
Sorry, David.
Oh no, you're good. You're good. Similarly, I think it's easier for me. I've recently narrowed down on my personal big why, but also the smaller whys that relate to maybe a business venture or project are a little bit more challenging for me and fluid to really nail down.
That's good. So for somebody listening to this that is...
But are you guys...
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I just want to clarify if you guys are talking about the little whys as like ways in which you're going to get to the big why. So are you guys referring to little whys? Like, are you equating them with almost like a how you're going to get to the big why? Or are they truly smaller whys?
That's a great question, Marta.
Yeah. So I think it's more of the former, what you're saying, Marta. I think to me it's more of the quote unquote, smaller whys or the hows maybe more so than the big why, right? That remains, unchanged for me and nailed it. I know exactly what it is. But it's those component pieces, I guess, that to me are, not always as clear as I'd like them to be, or not always, as clear on any given day of the week, right? So, yeah.
For me, I think that's true. And then also sometimes they may be like tangential for me in that, like, if I'm creating a new business, that may be a way to achieve my personal why, but it's also just different in that, like, it is slightly more expansive maybe, in that other people aren't going to be drawn to my personal why maybe, but they may be drawn to my business why. So for me personally, it's a how and it's a means to an end, but it also is just different in some instances for me.
Got it.
That's good. So
why do you ask, Marta? I'm curious. Was anything that was said that you disagree with, or I'm just curious why you asked that question.
It just sounded like, because you both have an overarching why, and it sounded like, there's many ways, right, to accomplish your why. And when I hear you guys talk about the smaller whys, it sounds more like the mechanism for getting to the bigger why, which in my mind is the how, right? And I have that too. I'm like, right now I'm evaluating, well, how do I get to this financial freedom place, or I guess time of freedom of time place, sorry. And one way I can get there is through a business acquisition. One way I can get there is maybe more real estate investing. Another way through launching my own company, right? There are many different ways to get there, and now I'm trying to evaluate what is the best path for me, right? And there's many different factors that play into that for me to make a decision. But those aren't, I wouldn't say those are my like smaller whys. They're just a means for me to get to that freedom of time why at the end, right?
Yeah, and that makes sense, and I think it's similar for me, but I think maybe almost to your point, right, Marta, where you said, you have your bigger why and you have all these hows, how you can get there. I like to also think about that. It's like, why did you pick that one versus another, right? Or say you've already picked, whatever it is, real estate or, running, owning, buying a business, whatever it may be. It's when you're already down that path, on that journey, that, I feel like sometimes you might be like, well, why this path and not another? Right? So it's in that sense, I don't know if that makes sense or not, but it's in that sense that I'm talking about these as whys versus as hows, right? Because you're right. I want time freedom, 100 different ways I can do this, right?
Yeah.
Which one do I pick?
Right.
Why do I pick that one? Why is this one important to help me achieve? And in a sense, those are the smaller whys in my mind that help get me to the bigger why.
Got it. I can see that.
So I always wonder somebody listening to this that's in their car and, their oil needed changed a month ago and they've got a kid screaming in the background and it sounds like you guys are all put together. And how would you advise them? What's one or two things they could do to begin to understand more what is their why, or to use what Nathan shared earlier, to avoid living a life of coasting? Because I think as I observe people, and I am guilty of this myself often, we do tend to live a life a lot more in reaction, and we just kind of wake up and we go through the motions, and before you know it, another week or month or year is gone. But it can feel overwhelming. It can feel daunting to be like, what would you recommend to people, the simple things that you would say they could do to help establish a why or purpose?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think to each their own, right? Not everybody is built the same way, and not everybody has necessarily the same drive in life to go through life, one way or another, with or without a why in this context, right? Not everyone is built to have the drive to want to be a, multiple time ultra marathon runner, for example, right? I have no idea. I'm not. It's not something I'm ever going to do, right? But to a certain extent, using that as an analogy, right? Maybe it's the same, for this particular conversation, right? Maybe not everyone is put on this earth to seek that bigger why and put themselves in a situation where they're, trying to, I don't know if overachieve is the right term, but where they're trying to, reach that goal, and maybe they're perfectly fine, quote unquote, coasting, to reuse a term from earlier. Obviously not trying to minimize anyone's situation here, but so I don't know. I would start with that. At least it's just to understand as a person, are you of one type or another?
That's good. Marta, David?
Yeah, I think first you have to overcome. Yeah, you have to overcome like this understanding about yourself, right? Is like, do I want a why or not? Do I need a why or not? And then if you do, then I guess my recommendation would be to just spend more time with yourself and your thoughts and thinking about, what do I want my life to look like? And whether it's like a 5, 10, 15, 20 year time horizon, like where do you want to be, right? And then kind of work backwards from there. And I think if you do spend that time really thinking about what you want, then you can get to your why.
That's good. That's good. David, anything?
I think Nathan and Marta covered that pretty well, especially would echo the idea of just getting time with yourself to really think and reflect. I think it's easy to get caught in kind of the loop, especially with all the overstimulation of media, TV, the responsibilities, that it is tough to create time to think, and we're kind of just like stuck on these habit loops, right? And so being able to step aside from that and like intentionally decide, what is it I actually want, and then what do I need to do to get that, and kind of like intentionally create, and discover that why. So yeah, I think that's important.
That's good. Any final thoughts as we kind of wrap up? I know I had a great question and an implied great question, but anything else that you guys feel like we should talk about revolving the why?
I'm going to try my great question. I don't know if I'm misreading the situation or the room here, Derek, but where are you on this journey to finding your why?
That's the best question so far.
That's a good question. It is.
And maybe it's too loaded of a question
really,
to wrap.
I don't have money in the budget for therapy, so this is good. No, I think, for me, I definitely, the time I remember having the most defined why, we were in a pretty rough financial spot. And about 23 years ago this month, actually, we just decided we were going to fix it. We were going to get out of our debt. It was our choice. And we went hard at it for about 3 years. And everything was tunnel vision. I was obnoxious to be around if you even brought a credit card out kind of thing. I mean, I had my Dave Ramsey stickers. I had it all. And, but then I think after we succeeded in that, it's kind of, I probably have drifted some, and I think sometimes I do wonder in real estate, like there's parts of it I love, but then if I sat down and said, well, why do I own this? And for me, the why was I looked around when I was younger and I realized everyone I know that's happy, that's retired, has a pension of some kind. I mean, it was a commonality of people, and we are in a generation, and the generations after us, that pensions are really not something that most people have access to anymore. And so I got into real estate as a way to create some kind of retirement income. But I probably, and I think as we get older, since I'm the oldest one on the call, I think purpose and legacy become more impactful, especially, I can only speak as a guy, but I think as men. And I'm probably as clear on my why as that answer, kind of convoluted. And I've identified, I'm definitely doing a better job of taking time to think and process and put myself around people and situations to try to identify more. I also know that I overthink everything, and so I imagine Nathan's office has whiteboards scattered throughout it with beautiful diagrams, and that's what I want to have. But in my mind, it gets cluttered, and it's all right. You don't have to point at your whiteboards, Nathan. It's okay. We all know. But I think sometimes I probably overthink it into. I think it should be something beautiful and defined, and we could trademark and.
Well, is this maybe not an instance of that overthinking? I don't know. I'm just asking because what I heard, right, was your why is to have a better, retirement future.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't know if that gets me out. I don't know if that
enough?
gets me.
I mean, that's a pretty good.
I mean, I think that was the why. I think I would like to now. I really want to have more impact on people. I love to see people grow. And in the industry, I've worked in the hospitality industry, so I have worked with lower income people for 35 years of my life. And I would love to find ways to help people achieve home ownership, help educate financial literacy, those types of. So there are things, yes, I'm identifying more, and maybe that is good enough. But there's also times, I think, just being honest, that I feel like I'm drifting, and definitely probably in more reaction, and than feeling like I'm being purposeful or clear. Does that make any sense at all? Put you guys on the spot next time.
It does.
So,
no, I think it does.
No. See,
but again, to your point, right, is as you kind of spend time talking through it and thinking about it, some of these things are coming out, right? And I think my point earlier was just, I don't know that we give ourselves enough of that time and opportunity to go through that process in just today's society in general, right?
Yeah. And I think it's important to adopt your own why. It's easy sometimes to pick up someone else's why sounds good, so you go with that. But I do think the whys get you through the hard times and the frustrating times, and so that's good. Any other final thoughts? Anything else?
Just wanted to note, Derek, there was one little golden nugget, I think, in what you said that I think is important to draw out, which is you mentioned legacy. And I think you're onto something there, and that can be a powerful way to hone in on your why. So just wanted to point that out and think that was a great contribution.
Thanks. Well, guys, I appreciate your time. I appreciate the free therapy. I'll send you some emails afterwards. So we, on behalf of all the hosts, we appreciate you guys listening and welcome any feedback or comments to any of us. Our contact information is always in the show notes. And I know Sean and Randy and Doug are not on this call, but they'll be on others. And again, 3 podcasts a week are released every week without fail. And we look forward. Thanks for listening. And thanks, guys. Have a great week. We'll talk to you again soon.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Another episode of The Gentle Art of Crushing It. It was an amazing episode. We know we sure learned a lot, and we hope you did as well. We want to take a second and thank you so much for viewing or listening to this episode. And please just know that we only ask for one favor, and that is to make this life magnificent. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.